Today on Steve Robb Reviews, I'm going to explain to you why the numbers you're seeing on this digital multimeter mean absolutely nothing. We're going to get into that. Let's take a look and see why. Okay, so for a lot of you, you're wondering, okay, why did I say that the numbers on a digital multimeter mean absolutely nothing? Well, I'm going to show you a perfect example and I'm going to explain exactly why. Because I've made so many electrical testing videos, and I'll put a link down below for my playlist if you want to take a look at them. The number one question I've always got was, Steve, I'm not too sure about operating a digital multimeter. What do all them numbers mean on voltage? And today we're only going to be looking at voltage. And what does that mean? Well, for somebody who doesn't know, the numbers mean absolutely nothing. So let's take a look at a reading here and let's just talk about it a little bit and discover why it actually doesn't tell you much at all, if anything. Well, I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment here, but first I'll just show you. That's plugged into my mains and it's 122.3839 volts, and it's just plugged into this electrical socket right here. And what does that mean? Well, it means absolutely nothing for most people who don't know what voltage you should see first. If you don't know what kind of voltage you expect to see, the numbers are actually meaningless. So what does this actually tell you? Well, all it tells you is the amount of voltage you're getting out of that particular outlet. It doesn't tell you that the outlet is good. It doesn't tell you that it's bad. It doesn't tell you that if you plug something into it, that it's going to work. Because all this is voltage. It's one part of electrical, and voltage on itself does not tell you too much. So I got a little bit of a experiment going on here, and we're going to use a 5 amp 12 volt power supply, and I'm going to show you how looking at voltage is actually meaningless in itself, because you have to actually know ahead of time what voltage you expect to see and what voltage you expect to see all the time. And that's the most important part. What voltage could you expect to see all the time? So let's get to the experiment right now. Well, here we are right here, and this is a simulated 12 volt power supply circuit. What could you expect to see in your automotive circuit? Well, full system voltage is 12.6. This is just your regular test light, and if I just light the test light up there, about 154 milliamps. And what happened? You went from 12.6 to 12.54. And is that good or is that bad? Well, if you don't know the difference, well, that would be considered real bad when I show you exactly the reason why. So let's move on to the next load. And the next load is just going to be just a regular, like a headlight bulb, a halogen headlight bulb, and we'll put that into the circuit and we'll see what that does. Okay, you ready? Let's just plug the light in. She's getting bright. Look at the voltage. And wow, it was right up there. So it's about 4.5 amps. And what does that tell you? Well, when you seen the voltage drop like a rock there, you know there was something definitely wrong. Because just by looking at the voltage reading itself at 12.6 when we started out, that means absolutely nothing to most people unless they know that if it drops down that much to 10 volts, well, how would they know there's anything wrong? Well, I'm going to explain why there is something wrong with this circuit and why it dropped so much. Take a good look at that connection that I've made. What I did was I broke the connection and I just wound in one little piece of wire, and you could see that it's burnt right into there. And that's exactly what happens when you overload a wire. So for a lot of people who aren't experienced with automotive wiring, the same thing applies for your household wiring. You have to know what the voltage is that you want to check in the first place. And the voltage itself only tells you that the circuit is actually on, but you pretty much have to know whatever it is that you are going to plug in, what voltage you could expect to have. Like in North America here, we run off a 120 volt system for just your mains, you know, for your average lights and hair dryers and that kind of stuff. And most electrical that I've looked at for household items is plus or minus 10% of the voltage. So it's rated so that the appliance will work with either 10% higher voltage or 10% lower voltage. Now generally, I've never seen high voltage except on generator systems, but generally if you plug in a big load to your utility, well, they ain't going to have that kind of drop most times. And at least I've never experienced it. But on your automotive wiring, you see where that one little strand was? How many times have you seen YouTube videos where the mice have gone in there and chewed on a wire? But you just seen there in that experiment, that little piece of wire showed 12.6. Now, you can plug something in here and you'll burn the wires right off if you go over 5 amps, that little strand of wire. But imagine a windshield wiper motor or a headlight being on. Well, eventually you just melt that wire right to pieces, right? So looking at the voltage itself actually does not tell you anything. The best way to look at voltage is when it's under load or your circuit is actually turned on. And what I'd like to show you as well is, I'm going to show you an extension cord that I took off of a light that had been, it's been there for maybe 10, 12 years. And a lot of people don't realize that extension cords have a shelf life. They're not there to be good for like, 20, 30 years and that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you a perfect example of a brand new extension cord I put in about 10, 12 years ago. The sunlight was never on it. It was off from the back of my house. It was a light from the back of my house. And I'll show you this cord just to show you how wires deteriorate on their own over time. Well, here's the cord right here. And I'll see if I can get some better light on it here. There we go. Now, can you see right in there? You see how the wires have all, that's just stress. Just from it just being there. And if you take a look right in there, yeah, the wires all become cracked and brittle. And I can just strip this off with my fingers now. And this is the type of thing that you get into with extension cords. Now this is all like kind of soft and punky, and yeah, this is no good, is it? And that's just from wires sitting inside. No sunlight was ever on these. They just deteriorate on their own. Now when I cut it back to here, well, everything was good. But because they were exposed to the air, yeah, this sheathing just comes off, just like it rots off almost. Well, I hope you found this interesting. And, just get yourself a digital multimeter and, start practicing yourself on measuring things so you know exactly what you're looking for. There's lots of reading material out there, lots of free online material that if you're looking at a 120 volt circuit and you put your leads in and you test it and it shows 85, well, for somebody who's never ever operated one of these would never know. Like, it's meaningless, right? It doesn't mean anything. But for the average homeowner, I would say, you know what? It's worth learning, because so many times, take for instance, I've gone to a friend of mine's house or whatever and put the meter on his outlet, and read 7 volts. And he says, like, what does that mean? And I says, well, it means whatever you plug in there ain't gonna work, right? And we went downstairs in his basement, and finally we traced it down to a junction box he had in the ceiling there. And one of his MAR connectors was loose. And that was the reason. So I mean, at least if you get yourself a meter and learn how to read it and practice a little bit. I mean, you can get a really inexpensive meter just for checking voltage and that kind of thing. But there is a huge relationship between looking at a voltage reading and amperage. And, you know, this is the big confusion that a lot of people find, especially what I see in novices with looking at an automotive circuit. So many times I've gone to somebody's place and they've looked at it and they said, there's nothing wrong with the wiring, right? And I says, what do you mean? And they says, well, put your meter on it, you know, and it shows, you know, like 12.4, 12.5 volts. And I said, well, that doesn't mean anything. You could have one wire, right? You could have one little strand there. And you're trying to run a load that, say, takes 7 amps. Well, it's not even going to run, you know? And when you turn the load on, that's where this is very important, because you turn the load on and you can measure the voltage. Well, you'll see the voltage just drop like a rock because it can't get the amperage as well. So there is a huge relationship there. And yeah, I've seen so many people get fooled by just looking at, it's called system voltage. You're looking at 12.6, it doesn't mean nothing. You know, you plug something into it and it don't work. Well, what do you do then? Well, you look for the voltage when it's running, or while the load is plugged in. And so this is just a basic kind of overview of just a digital multimeter and what voltage actually means. And for that question, like I mentioned in the beginning about people say, I'm not too sure what all your readings are showing, like all this voltage reading. Well, you have to actually know, right? You have to study a little bit. It's just like everything else. Most people don't know that 2 plus 2 equals 4 until you're old enough to learn it, right? So you have to learn these things. It just doesn't... A lot of people will ask me questions in the comments and they expect me to give them a voltage reading or an amperage reading, and I'm going, well, I can't, because, you know, there's too many variables. And I mean, you know, what you're seeing at one end could have a lot of complications. You could have rats chewing your wires, you could have a loose... you know, there's all kinds of reasons why systems fail and why you see, I guess, odd voltages. And that's where experience comes in. And for your household electrical wiring and your automotive wiring, many times it's best to leave it to the professionals, the professional licensed electricians and automotive technicians, because, you know, many systems, once you go below, and you've seen on the meter reading there, it was down to about 10 volts. Well, a lot of times on automotive vehicles today, the system shuts down when it gets below 12 volts. I mean, 12 volts on a vehicle is about 50% discharged. So, yeah, the vehicle won't even run, you know. I mean, the motor may run, but you ain't going to get your transmission to shift, or all kinds of electronics will not work. So, well, it's been a long enough video. You know, and I've just tried to brush over a little bit about why meter readings mean absolutely nothing unless you have a little bit of education behind it. So thanks for joining me here today, and I hope you learned something or had a little bit of fun watching, right? You guys come back again. If you've never seen this channel before, well, you're welcome to subscribe. Cheers.